Hello and welcome. Today it's not about Amazon Q. Today we're really going to talk about how the ideal CI/CD pipeline is going to look like, and I'm really glad that Viktor has joined me today. Viktor, welcome to my show.
Thank you very much that you invited me. You know, when I work as DevOps engineer more than 10 years, I saw so much time people stuck how to create the good CI/CD pipelines. So many people don't understand where CI finished, how to select the right branching strategy, because it's so terrible sometimes how to build the correct CI, where to run the test. So many questions. Should we deploy our code to first environment and use infrastructure as code? Should we monitor our low environment? How to deploy it with zero downtime deployments? How to measure your CI/CD? It's very also important part, because if you cannot measure something, it means like you cannot control. So for today's sessions, I think we will try to go all of these topics and try to explain. I will share first of all share my experience, and also very important part that it's not rely on any AWS product or some other products. It will be the concept, like foundation knowledge, where you can apply in any system, dependence where you are based on premise in the cloud, or you want to do like your pet project, and you need to understand also how to create your CI/CD pipeline.
So if you're here to learn about what CI actually means and what CD means, then you're right. You're on the right show. And in the next minutes, we're really going to do a deep dive, starting from all pieces. And we think that this is really going to help new starters, but it will also give a lot of insights into people that have been doing CI/CD for a while. Viktor, before we jump into content and topic, you and I, we have known each other for a few years now already. Who are you, and what the hell are you doing on your day-to-day job?
It's very interesting question. So first of all, I'm working for AWS. So I'm developer advocate, and my responsibility mostly focusing on community, create the content, to be a public-faced person, speak in the conference, prepare some blog post, video content, make some research, listen to the community when we have some issues in our product. Like all of us is human, so AWS really appreciate when you share your feedback about our products, about our services, and I am the person who's just like take your feedbacks and go into the service team. But like one of the main reasons why I'm here today, I believe, it's my previous experience a little bit. That's already mentioned. More than 10 years I work as DevOps engineer. I work for service company, and it means like I have a lot of different customers from different places. And I know I don't remember exactly how many CI/CD I built, but for me it's like, I don't know, maybe 100, something like that. So many projects, more than 15 projects I did, and many different microservices. So like experience in CI/CD I have very good in my opinion, for sure. Let's see during our talks, let's see how my opinion in your opinion is aligned or not. Maybe we have different view on the same things. Let's see.
Yeah, the cool thing about CI/CD really is that there is no 100% solution for all pieces of software that you build. There's always something that needs to be dependent on your team, on your setup, on your culture as well. Mm-hmm. But still, there's common things that we need to kind of all keep in mind if we try to aim for CI/CD in a real sense. So before we jump into kind of all of those details around where software starts and whatever, can I just start doing CI/CD, or do I need to consider something around what kind of software I'm building from your perspective?
Oh, it's not so easy question. So I will speak from my opinion. CI/CD was created many years ago, and if you just like start your first project and you want to develop something, you have to be familiar with concept. I don't want to say that you have to go and implement something very complicated with multi-stage and so on. For sure, no. Your culture, like CI and CD, it's a concept which create also the culture in your company. your process. So for example, if you look of definitions, what is DevOps, it can be very complicated question also, but again, a little bit my opinion, I see three main points. First of all, it's the people for sure. The second one, it's some products or technology. And the third one, what is most important, it's a process. And CI, it's a process. CI/CD, it's a process which can help you to deliver faster and develop more on the higher quality, less bugs on production, faster deployment, more reliable software, and so on, so on. So the main concept of CI/CD, it's first of all, it's a process. Like, so today I don't want to speak with you about some tools, some technologies. I want to speak with you as a concept. So this culture, like this process, create a culture inside the company, and you have to do it on the start. Doesn't matter what kind of the product are you doing. Like, it's super small as a startup. Anyway, you have to create CI to automate a lot of things in your day-to-day work. And CI, it's not also about like to create some automations. Also, you rely on the quality. You can say, okay, I have the results of my CI/CDs, like I cover, I know, for example, 60% of my code. I wrote, unit test, for example, integration test, and see like some results. So all of this concept help you, first of all, like as a developer, to understand that your product, your process of development is good. And your software also is good and can be deployed from main branch at any time to production.
And we're starting to get into the weeds of, do I deploy from a main branch? Do I deploy from a release branch? And these kind of things, which is kind of very important information. So maybe let's take a step back before we talk about all of the details around that. And let's look at what a release pipeline lifecycle can look like in general.
Yes. So in general, when we speak about continuous integration, continuous delivery, when we want to deploy something, everything started from source code. And again, like I will speak today a lot of time about that sometimes we as developers forget to mention that the source code is very important part, because in source code, it's where we start our continuous integrations. So for that, after that, like for sure, we build something. So it's where continuous integration is going on. We build our product, we run some test, and release to the productions. And in every step, as you can see, for example, here it's continuous integration, continuous delivery, deployment. Also, I will want to pay attention to continuous operations. Also, one of the interesting part, because people forget that they have to monitor their solutions. So we will see all of them and this in our conversation. And
so
sure,
first of all, let's stay on the release cycle for a tiny bit, because there's always a confusion around what continuous integration actually means. Is this happening on the developer's desk? Is this when you take your source code and push it to your source code repository? How would you characterize that?
Continuous integration started when you merge your result of work to Git or other source code repository. I don't know, maybe you still use SVN, for example, or something else. First of all, like continuous integration, the main word here is integrate. So when you merge your changes, like for example, I write, for example, during the last couple of days, some new functionality. You also did something, and maybe this functionality can be overlapped. I mean, like some functions can be overlapped in our code. Continuous integration started as soon as we tried to merge something to our Git, for example. I will speak about Git because currently I would say maybe it's 90% people use Git, but it can be SVN, for example, or some other source control. So we start integrated as soon as we integrate result of our work, not to run some unit test or run a build or something like that. No, as soon as we integrate result of work. If we can merge, this changes. So this is where continuous integration started. Okay. And integrations is first of all integrate between teammates, between your colleagues. Like you work on backend, for example, I work on the front end, and we merge together, see how we align. So in one product, in one repository.
So continuous integration starts when you and I bring our different pieces of source together, and when we ensure that they still work together after your changes and my changes have been merged into the application or into the source code of the application, I would say.
Yes, absolutely.
Cool. Let's go once again back to that slide, because there's something. You have CI, we defined that, and there's CD, and we didn't really define that. And there's two CDs on this slide. So there's continuous delivery and there's continuous deployment. How do you see the difference, and what's your perception on what these should be?
My proposal will be go a little bit back to this conversation, like maybe in a few minutes, because I want to go like step by step. Because
Let's do that.
if we like scroll a little bit, so first of all, like this slide, it shows where continuous integration started. We will build together with you today blueprint. So, and I want to say like continuous integration started when we merge something. So in our version control, run some, for example, code review. But before we continue, I propose to back a little bit and speak how to select the correct branching strategy, because it's a step.
That's
step
important.
0. Yes, it's very important. Like when I started my career, I remember that I joined some project and people shared with me permissions to Git. And I opened the list of the branches, like what they had. And it was a couple screens, like I scroll. And all of them, like it was some branch number 1, feature branch, refactoring branch, release branch, staging branch, so many different branches. I didn't understand what's going on and what the really active branches is and what should I use to merge my changes. So it's bring us to the questions, what the correct branch strategy currently will be, and my answer, first of all, please review what your application is. Like previously was very, very common, Gitflow by Vincent Recent, but it was created 14 years ago. 14 years ago, Vincent created this branching strategy, and the main purpose of this branching strategy was to create a product what you can deliver through the compact dist, for example. It means like you finish the product and delivery distributed somehow. Currently, as we deploy our applications, like mostly it will be web applications, so we deploy to the cloud, we deploy to Kubernetes, we deployed some very dynamic environment. Gitflow will be not the best options, in my opinion, because it's bring to us a lot of different branches, as you can see here, and most of them will be active, and so it means like we have to manage somehow to understand what's going on and so on. Be very careful when you want to select Gitflow as a branching strategy.
Yeah, the complexity lies on the developers understanding what's the current status of the different release branches, and or of the different branches in Gitflow, and that doesn't go away over time. So it's only a growing list of branches, and it's not something that you can really focus on. Right? So I agree with you that Gitflow might not be appropriate for continuous delivery, but for the continuous process of iterated software, right? When I started my career, we also had something that was a little bit like Gitflow. We didn't call it like that, but we had long living feature branches that took over 3 months to develop. And then there was a day when we merged everything. And I still remember a colleague that worked from home even in that times, and once a quarter, she came into the office to ensure that she did the merge of all of the stuff that she was working on over the last 3 months. And I could tell you, it was a real pain. But I understand why we did that at that time. There was no need to deliver or to deploy or to provision something on a regular basis, right? People were happy getting a new version every 3 months. And this changed, and I think that's where Gitflow today is not applicable anymore for the cloud world that you and I at least live in.
You said very interesting number, 3 months after working on your own branch. During the 3 months, it can be really pain just to merge your changes. And for that reason, I said continuous integration started as soon as you merge your changes. Because if you work on some functionality during 3 months and your main branch can be can be totally, absolutely different compared to what you had 3 months ago. So it's where I started continuous integration. So if you ask me what will be the best options for today, I would say Github Flow, for example, or trunk base development. Back into GitHub flow, what I really like it here, first of all, it's short-lived branches. It means like we create some branch for very short period of time, like working on our, for example, bug fix or some functionality feature branch. As soon as we done, we merge these changes, and not only merge these changes, we also close this branch, we delete this branch. So we merge the results of our work, integrate it with other teammates, and we are done. Also, it's bring additional, like concept like code review, very great options if you have distributed team and you cannot rely on the quality of the engineers. Like you don't know who they are, what they do, like what's the level of seniority and so on. And recently, like before I did preparation for our today conversation, so I back to Software Radar, what I already mentioned with you. So they recently released the last version 30 in April. And in Software Radar, they very often have, like have 4 main directions what currently happened with industry. And I read this interesting part that people stuck with pull request, with code review approach, and they cannot start continuous integration. And Martin Fowler also updated his article, What is Continuous Integration, which I highly recommend to read to all of our listeners. Like, as you can see, it was updated recently, like in January 2024. So please read in details what is continuous integrations. What I want to pay attention that currently in the industry, we see this problem with when we stuck with pull request review, we stuck with people who are responsible to review our changes. So and it's I see new function, not new functionality, but new approaches how to deal with it. And the main concept of that is it's when you start to work on your new feature, for example, yeah. So mostly what we're doing, we done with our feature and we have to merge to main branch, like to main line, yeah. But it means like we cannot continue to work on another functionality. We have to wait when some people will say, hey, this code looks good for me, let's merge to the main. They propose to use another approach, instead approach. So you're done with your functionality. It's your point when you're ready to merge to the main branch, but you continue in the same branch to work on another functionality on another feature. So you have a time point of your changes, like for example, on this Git commit I'm done with feature A, and this commit I'm done with feature B. And as soon as someone, I know some senior person say, hey, I'm happy with this functionality, you can merge it. So
I like that idea, yeah. I like that idea. And I've been using that approach as well, Viktor, in the past few months in some of the projects that I'm working with. Another alternative is to do a feature branch from that feature branch. So if you because then, so if you go back to the other, so if you then branch out of that feature over there and then develop the feature on that new feature branch, right? Then you get the same stacking, but you can still see the difference if required, right? Because then exactly. That's the thing that I've been practicing as well. Because then you still have the possibility to go back to main if you want to, but you can still compare those two feature branches until you get your approval, right? But as you said at the beginning, it's up to the culture of the team on how they want to work as well, right? And how you feel comfortable in merging your changes together, right?
When we create this functionality, it means like we will create another feature branch here, and maybe it's here another feature branch, and again it can be terrible to back to main. And for me, it's workaround. It's not the right solution.
Yeah.
For me, the right solution, if you don't trust all of your teammates, maybe to work on your continuous integration test, some automated process, what can say, hey, I'm happy to merge these changes. Because in other cases, we will see the same what's happened during Gitflow, multiple branches, and nobody understands what's going on. You know about these branches, but if someone else will back and say, what's going on? I see one feature branch, another feature branch, third one, and another one. Which one I have to look at that and where I can fix my problem.
Yeah, you're right. So you need to get rid of those feature branches again. I 100% agree, right? But if you need to kind of wait until PRs get approved, that might be a possibility to move your head without starting to mix things.
It's workaround. Again, it's workaround. It's good workaround, but it's not a solution of the root cause. Root cause, try to speed up the process of review. And if you see this take a lot of time, try to automate it. So, I mean, rely on some test, different type of test. We will see just like in a couple slides in a couple minutes.
And it would be amazing if our developer tools that we use would solve that problem for us. Yeah, so like Code Catalyst has started to integrate queue on pull request reviews at the end, right? Things like that can help us to get those approvals better, but still we will need to understand the feedback that you get over there, right? So, but I agree with you.
Sure.
Cool, let's move on to the other alternative.
Super interesting approach, trunk-based. This is how I started my career, because we had SVN and we merged everything to the main branch as soon as we done with any type of the work. So the main difference between GitHub flow, that is super short leaf branches. So almost every day you have to commit to the trunk, to your main line. So you as a developer, you done with some super small piece of work and you merge it back to the trunk. So where we start our continuous integration. One of the biggest issue is that, not like the biggest issue, but it can be a challenge. First of all, how to release. So as you can see, we have a separate release branches here. And another one, it's how to merge my changes if I'm not done with my functionality. It's as we can see, here appeared feature toggle. So again, it can be a good solution, but be very careful with feature toggle. If you have thousands of feature toggle, it can be also a terrible situation on the production. Good approach, but again, dependent what your culture is, and if you're happy to merge your job every day to the trunk. So I think trunk-based development can be a good solution for you. Have you ever tried to try trunk-based development?
Yes, I really like it. I've never worked well with feature toggles, to be honest, in that case, but I think that we need that for trunk-based. So I've kind of done that. If in my personal projects, I commit to the trunk 100 times a day or whatever, right? Because that's the best way of really seeing that it actually works. I think you mentioned it, but the most important piece here then is going to be that you have a reliable CI and that you can trust on, and a reliable level of testing that you can trust on with that, right? So how do I avoid that Johannes' last commit broke something to a trunk? And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that today, I would guess.
Yeah, and another point also, if you see some issue on your release, so like not advanced functionality, but sometimes people forget that in Git we have a cherry pick. Cherry pick, it means like you can take one commit from other branch and merge it to another one, like for example to our release 1.1. So moving on, so where CI started, already mentioned, it started on your version control. So as soon as you merge your changes, it's where continuous integration started. We already spoke about what continuous integration is. So first of all, also continuous integration, it's automations, like automate your process. And the key, the main goal of continuous integration, it's not only like to merge our changes, integrate. No. The main point, it's a feedback, to provide for you feedback about your work. It's like go through the all test during the merge process, during the build, and so on. We get a feedback, and it's very, very, very important to have this feedback very quickly. So if your continuous integration run more than 50 minutes, most probably developer will switch to another task. And all of us we are human. Yeah, and like if I switch to another task, I upload this context of the code to my brain, very, like compared to generative AI. So you have one context of working on some task. So if you have to back to another one, you lost this context and you have to spend again some time to understand what's going on here. So my recommendation with this feedback loop, we will see KPIs 15 to 30 minutes. It's ideal time when you have to get some feedback from your continuous integration work.
On the GitHub flow / trunk base, does this start when I push my feature branch in your perspective, or does this start when I merge to the main or trunk?
This feedback, so you create your separate feature branch. For all of your feature branch, you also have to have like some CI process to just build your result. Like you're working alone on some functionality, but still, this code can be built, can be run our test, and test pass or failed. So this results of like continuous integration should also run on your separate feature branch. So it means like this feedback loop started as soon as you create your feature branch and make your first commit.
Okay.
I'm still good or not?
Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
And the output of continuous integration is prepare our artifact. Artifact, it's like, the final result of work of continuous integration. Artifact means like that's some zip archive, jar file for Java, Docker, or doesn't matter what you prepare, but it should be some artifact which you will deliver to different environment. We'll see it like in a couple of minutes. So continuous integration, we see here we have some build server. It can be Code Catalyst, for example. It can be Jenkins, if you like Jenkins, anything like. Again, today not speak a lot about technology, but mostly about the concept. Some place where you run your continuous integration. Also, it's a good question. How do you think, like, if all of developers will run on their own machines some steps like code analysis, build, unit test, and prepare artifact? Can we call it continuous integration or not? What do you think?
So for me, it starts there, and that's where I get my initial feedback of my work. I would say it's part of the developer experience flow, maybe not of the CI itself, right? But it's important to have that. And there's hundreds of flavors of how to do that, how to achieve that. So we didn't really talk about pre-commit hooks that you could enforce, right? If you automate that thing, then I would say it is part of the CI pieces. If you rely on the developer to have in mind to execute NPM test before you commit, then it's not CI, right? It's CI when it gets enforced on the developer, from my perspective.
I remember one of the project where we had so many unit tests that can run, I don't know, like more than 1 hour. So what we decided to spread this run of this unit test on local machines of developers and upload, upload to the Git with results of this unit test. So every machine run unit test, and you also share this unit test with a central place with some build server. But anyway, in my opinion, continuous integration should have some central place. We are not rely on local machines. Why? Because in your local machines you can have some additional dependency, library, runtime, your unique runtime. I know, for example, you're working on Windows machine, I'm working on Linux machine or Mac, and so on. And every development environment can be super different. So it means like we have to be worried where we build this process. But for sure, in some cases, you can start this like pre-hook commit. Absolutely agree. That's also a very interesting topic. But anyway, continuous integration, we need to have some build server, like where we run and see the results on some dashboard, we are good or not good. So also, as you can see here, I bring additional definition like quality gate. Quality gate, it helps us that we are ready to move on the next step or not. It's our feedback loop. Quality gate after every step, like for example, build failed. So feedback to our developer and say, hey, can you please look at that? I cannot build the results. Unit test, we run the unit test. My recommendation will be not to create a coverage of unit test 100%. Start from something, and good number, I don't know, will be 60, 80% but not definitely 100%. You don't need to spend a time to cover 100% of all the functionality by unit test. What do you think about that?
I agree. 100% is something that doesn't really help, and then you start writing test code to reach 100%. And you're not, in the moment that your unit tests do not test real functionality, that moment you should stop investing, is my perspective. So you need to cover the different use cases and edge cases that you maybe cannot cover in manual or automated integration tests later. But you shouldn't aim for reaching 100% of coverage. Where's the integration tests? They are not yet here, right?
Yes, that's a good point. That's a good question. Super quickly, like to pay attention for people who just like listen and us to look at our topic, continuous integration. Don't forget that you have to have some version of your functionality. Semantic version, super popular. My short like recommendation will be to include to the patch version git commit, hash of commit. It helps you to trace the changes and understands what's the current version of the code on the production or some another environment. But you ask very good question. Where is continuous integration test? So first of all, what's the difference from your perspective between integration test and unit test?
Well, the unit tests are really just on the source code level. That means they test functionality of the source code itself. And in integration tests, we start to test something that is more integrated than just on a specific source file. So we see that different source files work together in the way that we expect that. We verify that there is there is something that needs to happen. If thing A happens, then thing B needs to happen, right? That's what integration tests do. But they are more technical focused from my perspective. On the other side, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
No, but please finish your...
On the other side, then acceptance tests for me are where I try to test business functionalities, like where I really try to verify that the feature that Johannes just built really does what the product manager wants from me.
Okay. So my understanding, like for sure, it's gonna be a good conversation, but based what I know and based on my experience, so unit test, you're absolutely right. It's just like test your source code, but very important to understand that unit test will never use something else. I mean, like you have a function which just like calculate two numbers, 2 and 2, for example. The result should be 4. If we send like 2 and 2, we expect it 4. If we see the result like 5, so like fails unit test. But very important to understand that for unit test, we don't store some result. Like it means like if I have some functionality and should store in file system, for example, or in some database or some other places, it will not be integration. It will be integration test. It's not unit test. Integration test started when we store some results, for example, on our databases, file system, or send to another microservices. So we currently live in multiple microservices. And when we test that, if I ask some API from this service, will I get the correct answer or not, like how I process and send, for example, to service number 3, like, I don't know, it's here. So on and so on. So long story short, integration test, check integration between multiple components. It also can be a file system, database, and so on. And what I want to pay attention, so we currently in continuous delivery. So we did not say what is continuous delivery and what's the difference between continuous integration. So continuous delivery started as soon as you have this integration environment. So in my case, in this diagram, I call it dev environment. You can call it integration environment.
It's just a name at the end, yeah.
Yes. And also what will be very important part that you have to create this environment using a code. So infrastructure provisioning also should be part of continuous delivery. Sometimes people forget about that and create it manually, just clicking ops in AWS, or I know manually create in Kubernetes, or blah blah blah, doesn't matter. So infrastructure provision should be also part of your continuous delivery. You create everything automated in your environment, and you deliver the artifact what we got from continuous integration to this first integration environment. And for sure, run additional tests, like you said, acceptance test, business logic, integration test, just maybe integrate with some other components and so on. And continuous delivery does not stop only on one environment. My experience, mostly in continuous delivery, you will have multiple environments. Like in this diagram, I have 3 additional environments, like dev, QA, UAT user acceptance test, and run different type of tests on different environment. Like for example, on UAT, which should be like a replica of production, we run performance test, for example. So again, it's dependent of your business needs. It can be only one environment. It's also a good solution. Absolutely agree. But my experience, mostly we had 2 environments, like QA plus UAT, or sometimes we call it staging environment, and run different type of tests.
But you just said something that is also important to note. The artifact that you built is the same that you pass through all of these environments, right? So I always say that the artifacts, they come out of the CI portion, then they are immutable, they are not being changed anymore, and then they are deployed to n number of environments that you need on your way to the production environment at the end, right? Why are you advocating for, even before production, having 3 different environments here?
It's a good question. So again, as I said, it can be different number. The first environment, it's like it's dev environment. It's it's like super non-stable environment. It's where you can just like to run some integration test, where you can test the result of your work, because in continuous integration, we remember we just run some unit test, not integration test. And dev environment can be super unstable. So this means like we don't guarantee that it works 100% or have any SLA. But for QA environment, for example, in this situation, we integrate the result of work and also invited some other team to test the results of work. For example, quality engineers or other microservice teams. And as you can see here on the first slide, where we bring continuous operation. So it means like for this environment, I would say not dev, maybe not a dev, but at least from QA and UAT, we have to monitor what's going on with our environment. Because if QA environment does not work, so it means like for other people, it's a blocker, and they cannot continue to do their job. So please monitor these environments. UAT or staging, pre-prod, doesn't matter how to call it, but some environment which is not a prod, because as you can see, at the end of continuous delivery, we have some approval gateway or release manager or some person who said this release is ready to be deployed to the productions. And it is a main key difference between continuous delivery and continuous deployment.
That makes sense. Now, before we go into the production environment, what do you think is a reasonable time frame for getting into this until this release approval gateway? Are we talking 3 months, as I was telling you earlier? Are we talking 10 minutes? What's your view on this, and how do you see that with your customers these days?
So I will share my experience. So we worked using Agile, Scrum, blah blah blah. So it means like we have a sprints. Every 2 weeks we deliver new functionality to the productions. So it means like we finish with the steps every 2 weeks. So new functionality every 2 weeks arrived here, and we approved and delivered to the productions. How often and how fast you have to go through all of this process, again, it will be depends on the complexity and mostly of quality engineers, because I stuck so much time when people from quality engineers team wanted to have a separate environment to test some functionality. And if you deliver very often, like every 10 minutes, new code, for example, to UAT, is like pre-productions. You can affect also result of work from other teams. So maybe UAT will be more a little bit stable, and for example, you deploy to UAT like every week or every 2-3 days, depending how much time you need to run some test, or maybe you need run some manual test, like go through the all functionality and so on, so on. Again, depending. Dev environment, as I said, not stable. You can deploy every 5 minutes as soon as you're done with your commit and changes. QA, UAT, up to, what's the requirements, what's how many people involved to this environment, and how many people need to have this environment stable. But again, I would say you need to deliver something pretty often, like 2-4 weeks or 1 to 4 weeks. It's a good number when you deliver something new to production. We will see in metrics, like in KPIs. If you do some changes in your production very often, you know what's going on, how it works, and so on. If you do only one time in 3 months, most probably you will forget how to correctly to deploy, what can be an issue, and so on, and your failure rate will be higher, and also time to restore also will be higher because you are not familiar with this process.
Yeah, the more often you practice that, the faster and better you get. And
Yes.
I think what you also need to take into account is the size of a change that you're pushing through the pipeline, right? So if it's a security fix or if it's just a typo that I'm fixing,
Yeah.
then I might be able to push this through very quickly. If this is a security incident, I need to have a fast pathway as well to directly go to production. I think this is something that we didn't yet talk about, and I don't think that we're going to have time for that today, but it's an important conversation to have as well. Like, how do you accelerate if there is a need to do so?
Continuous deployment can help us to do it. That's what I did, for example, as you said, like a typo for security issue. For sure, it should be some separate way how you deliver, because for security issue, you don't want to deliver new security problem on production. So it means like anyway, you have to run some additional security test and so on. But for some part of your code can be delivered to production without waiting manual approval, continuous deployment. Again, like the biggest difference between continuous delivery and deployment, that in deployment you deliver to the production as soon as your CI/CD process is done. You're not waiting for some manual approval, some person who said like push the button and deploy to the production. But not like a challenge, but it can be a challenge how to implement zero downtime deployment. And for that reason, I want to just like to share with you how I see what the current deployment strategy exists on the market. Not all of them, for sure. You can bring something new and say, hey, we have this type of the deployment strategy, but mostly what I saw in my experience, it's five main branching strategies. The first one, it's recreate, so with downtime. So we just like stop our environment or delete our environment and create it from the scratch, or just like stop, copy our files like zip archive and move into the next phase. Rolling update, very common and super easy to implement. So as you can see, I have some characteristic for all of these deployments. So for rolling update, super easy to implement. So just like in Kubernetes, for example, it's available out of the box. Many cloud services also provide rolling updates. So very, very easy and quickly to implement. Blue-green. Blue-green, it means like you have two separate environments, blue and green, and using some network device, you just switch the traffic between blue environment to green environment. It can be, it will be double cost from your cloud perspective. It means like you have to support and up your two environments. And so 2 environments, double price. So from cloud perspective, blue-green can be a little bit more expensive for sure. As soon as you're done with your deployment process, you can delete previous version of environment for sure. It's a good practice. But if you want to have very quickly rollback, and again compare to rolling update, you have to support 2 environments, because if you need to roll back, you just like again switch your load balancer, for example, to the previous versions. Also, you see here I put it like you can negative impact of your users a little bit more than rolling update. Why? Because when you switch this network traffic from one environment to another environment, again depending on your application, you can affect client sessions. So it can be, but if you have the correct stateless applications, most probably you will not affect of your users. Canary, so in the Canary you can see it's a first deployment where we test our real traffic. So 5%, 10% you send to the new version of your environment and see what's going on with your application. A/B testing, as you can see, it's only one deployment strategy where we test the targeted users. What it means like, for example, you have your e-commerce application and you want to test new functionality only on users who spend 100 euros every month, and only on this specific group of users. So it means like you need to have your own custom implementations of A/B testing, and mostly A/B testing as a deployment strategy. It's needed for business needs. I mean, like when you do some dramatically changes, redesign, test how it affects some specific users. So from complexity perspective, it's one of the most complicated deployment strategies. Have you ever implemented Canary deployment?
No, I never did. I never implemented A/B testing either. I kind of never implemented blue-green for real, to be honest, right? And I think the main choice here is also going to be what's the size of the application or the service that we're talking about. What's the speed of your CI/CD pipeline, right? Sometimes you maybe don't even need blue-green if you can apply fixes very fast or roll back very fast. It really depends also on the use case that you get into, right? If anyone listening has ever implemented a successful strategy for Canary deployments and for A/B testing, I'd love to get you as well on and talk about how do you achieve that from a CI/CD perspective and automation perspective. Yeah. That would be my comments on these, and I think it's really hard to pick the correct deployment strategy for your service, from my perspective. But you can move your way up if you need to, and depending on the size of your stuff as well, right? You don't need to directly start with A/B testing, is what I'm trying to say. You can move towards that goal if you feel the need, right?
I would say start from rolling update, recreate, please don't use it, because most probably you will affect your end users, like because you will have you will have downtime. So the first strategy, which is super easy to implement, rolling update and multiple services have out of the box. It's not so big deal. Like you stop, I know, for example, 10% of your environment and run 10% of another environment and like moving from one version to another version, the traffic. So it's super easy to do it.
Yeah, and blue-green is in the serverless world also not that cost intensive, right? So it depends on how do you actually do that. But there is other challenges in implementing that one as well. Okay, Viktor, you teased Matrix. Are we ready to go into Matrix now or not yet?
Yes, for sure. Metrics is very important. So in industry, as you can see, I already spoiled a little bit. So DORA metrics. So what is DORA metrics? So first of all, DORA is a DevOps research and assessment. They did every year this DevOps research and shares what's the current state of the industry from DevOps culture perspective, I would say. And they nominated and say, hey, we have 4 main metrics. The first one, deployment frequency. How often you deploy. So we already mentioned it's very important to have not very often, like every 5 minutes to deploy something to production, but not at like every 3 months. So lead time to changes. So it means like you done with your commit. So for example here, and how much time will need to see these changes on production. So it's this lead time, not lead time in another definitions. Like for example, when you have your idea, sometimes people say lead time. It's when I create this ticket in Jira, how much time will need it to see these results, or like this ticket will move to the done and I will see this ticket in my production system. No, the definition of lead time, it means like I'm done with these changes to release branch or to the main branch or to some, so this code in the on repository, and how much time will need to see these changes on production. Change failure rate, so percentage of your deployment, like not success, and time to restore of your service. So how long it will take to recover from failure on your production. And what the guy said, like if you have like on-demand deployment, like for example, as you mentioned, for security update, your lead time less than 1 hour and failure rates close to 0. You are a light team, only 26%. So you're a superstar. You have one of the best world CI/CD process. So it's a good number. But you know, like I did some my custom metrics. It's not official from AWS. Like again, yes, I'm working for AWS, but this is from my experience, from my long journey to work as DevOps engineer, and I wanted to share it with you.
Before we go into those metrics,
yeah.
Do you know of a tool that captures DORA matrix correctly?
Yes.
That you would recommend?
That's a good question.
And I'm asking that because it's really hard to capture that and to make sure that you can make that available on a regular basis, right? And I've been going down the rabbit hole of trying out different tools to then capture your metrics correctly. Yeah, and the GitHub Actions doesn't do it. Code Catalyst doesn't do it. Harness tries to do it sometimes, somehow, but it's not that perfect at the end, right? And there are so many CI/CD tools that tell you about capturing DORA metrics and give you hints on how to do it, but I haven't seen a best practice implementation. So
again,
I think I laid the foundation of not answering. This is the coolest AWS service. What's your current take experience?
So again, like reference to ThoughtWork technology radar. I don't know why it's currently this page don't want to open for me. So this tool, LinearB. So they said they can integrate with GitHub, with GitLab, with Bitbucket, and Jira. And I first time saw that someone at least to say that we strong focus on DORA metrics.
Okay.
Our goal of their product to implement these DORA metrics is I first time saw that at least some of the products on the market exist who said for us it's a key goal to delivery and to show what's your current DORA state, like DORA metrics. And this is only one tool what I currently know, and as you can see, like it's super, not like super fresh.
What is
it's
that?
like
LinearB?
Yes, LinearB.
Okay, I've never heard of that, so thank
Me
you.
neither. Absolutely. Like before this weekend, I have never heard about this product. I cannot say it's a good or not, but based on the ThoughtWork radar and what I see, people recommend it. So maybe it's a good point just like to look at that. Also in radar, they have different, like levels of adoptions. So it's assess. Assess, it means like just try. Look at this solution. Maybe it's good or not. Trial, it means like you need to think how to implement the production. Adopt, it's 100%. This tool should be on your production environment.
Cool. Then let's see. Thank you so much for that. And now let's go back and move to the metrics which are not DORA, which you have been working on, Viktor.
Yeah, so I did implementation of this metrics with Jenkins. So Jenkins, it's super flexible system with a lot of challenges, but at the same time with a lot of flexibility. So what we did, we collected a lot of logs from Jenkins, and just to be clear why we did it. So we didn't have a good trust with our customer. So because customer complying a lot of on continuous integration, continuous delivery on Jenkins and so on and so on. So we decided, okay, we cannot rely on our, like feelings that we have a good CI or not good CI, and we decided to create our custom metrics. Again, based on the Jenkins, like that's how I did it. It's not so easy. So we spent almost 3 months just to implement this metrics and demonstrate it for our customer. What is it? So the first metrics, percentage failed, not for productions, but just like percentage failed of your builds. It can be a problem with infrastructure, for example. So my recommendation value will be 5-10%. Time to feedback. So feedback loop, remember, it's super important. It's one of the key goal for continuous integration, to provide feedback as soon as possible. Less than 30 minutes, again, because we will switch the focus on other tasks as developer and so on. Percentage of unknown to known, most probably it's related to infrastructure problems or some Git updates or something else. So make sure that you know why this failed. So it means like you have more than 90% known problem. So if this happens, that you know why this happens. Queue on your build server, my recommendation less than 5. So if you have like long queue on your build server and people just waiting for not run their build, but just like waiting for other people. So it means like, so when we started this project, developers can commit only 3-4 times per day, because other time it's just like wasted because Jenkins was so busy, and the queue of build on the build server was so long, so people just waiting for the feedback. And again, feedback should be less than 30 minutes. Average queue time, also like a good number, less than 10 minutes, and count of pull request. Nowadays, I would replace this pull request count to pull request cost. So the same abbreviation, but with another, not count, but cost, and provide like live information. For example, if you want to apply these changes, how much it will be cost from infrastructure. So we are living in cloud, and any resources in cloud cost some money. So if you can do it, implement pull request cost to show that this changes before you merge these changes, before you apply these changes to production.
Okay, this interesting metrics that go a little bit more into looking at the engineering quality and developer experience as well, right?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
What you use Jenkins to calculate those is what I heard, right?
Jenkins was the source of logs.
Okay, got it.
We showed all of these metrics in Grafana.
Okay.
So store separately these logs, process these logs, because it's you set the correct message. There's currently on the market not so many tools which you can out of the box show the correct DORA metrics. So to implement all of these metrics, logs from Jenkins, process all of them, and to show on Grafana. So custom implementations, custom scripts, and so on.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it makes sense. I think that's it's getting more important to talk about engineering quality metrics as well. Like, and this can be a very difficult conversation as well. So if you go back to the slide of the metrics, right, there is a perception from my perspective over there where, let's say, if you look at the results and just at the metrics, you can tie it back to an individual's or a team's performance, right? Or not. So let's say build failed percentage. If all of the builds from Viktor fail, Viktor is a bad employee. And just exaggerating or not.
The main goal of this metrics, like for example, build failed percentage, to understand the problem on infrastructure team.
Okay.
Like we did a lot of changes from infrastructure, or for example, guys who are responsible for infrastructure provisioning. It can be configuration management on Ansible, Terraform, CloudFormation, CDK. Doesn't matter. So someone who responsible for infrastructure, for our in general also stability of your continuous integration, because sometimes, I don't know what's your experience, but my experience, agent just like failed. I lost the agent for some reason, and I have to restart again my CI process because it was on spot instance, for example. Maybe it's like a container containing just I don't know, leak of memory or something happened on the core machine. So we try to understand: do we have an issue with our continuous integration system? It's not to say that. For sure, you can say if Viktor committed every time and for every time have failed build. I cannot say it's a good question, just like to look at the Viktor and say, please, Viktor, make sure that you committed a good code. No, maybe for, if someone committed and have failed, maybe you need to create a separate process to test feature branch before you make these changes to merge to, for example, the main. The main goal of this KPIs to understand what's going on with your CI process, understand the productivity of the team, because if you have to wait for hours of the results of unit test, how you can be productive?
Yeah.
How you can get the result as a feedback loop? Not to say that Viktor or Johannes is bad or good guys. No, mostly to look at the whole system, integrations like code, infrastructure, CI process, configurations. Maybe we don't have enough resources. Like for example, build server queue. If you have 50 builds waiting for just like to run their own build. I would say it's very bad situation.
Yeah.
And it's not bad because someone responsible for that. It's bad because we don't have enough resources for our CI process.
Yeah, that makes sense. I would say it's more metrics in terms of developer enablement and developer productivity, right? And not not on the output of developers or of the team or something like that. And this is really important if you want to add your own metrics to your CI/CD processes.
But all these metrics is super rely and reflect what the DORA proposed. So cool. I want to finish again to show this like blueprint. In my opinion, it can be ideal blueprint. For sure, you can implement some part of them. You can take some inspiration. For example, you don't have something or you forget to do it, or like it's how you can start to look at your CI process. Super quickly, again, don't forget that everything started from version control. Branching strategy, very important. Quality gate on every stage. Feedback loop, very important part of your continuous integration. When you're done with continuous integration, your artifact should be delivered to all of your environments. Immutable. What Johanna said, what I said. Artifact should be immutable, and we deliver the same artifacts between different environments. And again, like up to you how many environments you want, up to you how many different type of tests you want to run. But like it's can be super dependent what's your goal, what's the complexity of application, how many resources do you have, and so on.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to keep in mind that what we did today is really an overview and giving you an insights into what the different components should be and what you need to keep in mind. There's always a technical component then. How do you translate that to the technique that you actually use? How do you translate that into your culture of your environment as well, of your organization as well? And it's really difficult to provide you an opinionated implementation of this CI/CD blueprint, right? Viktor, if you could bring up that pipelines link that I just sent you. There is something that got announced at reInvent 2022, which kind of comes out of the AWS ecosystem. It's the deployment pipeline reference implementation. so the DPRA at the end. I know I just sent it here in the chat. So
this chat.
somewhere there should be a chat for you.
Yeah, I think I found it.
And that's where I sent you the link to an example reference implementation. So what I wanted to end with at the end is, if you now want to get yourself to a starting point, right, and want to take what Viktor and I just talked about, right, there's example implementation. So on the left hand side you will see that there is a reference implementations link, right, using CDK pipelines and or using Code Catalyst as a reference implementation. Have a look there. That might give you some insights into how to get started and how to bring things together, right? And then another thing, and I will give you the link as well. I think I sent it to you earlier, Viktor, is the Progen pipelines piece. And I'm asking you to open it because then I don't need to do that much recording, that much blah, blah, blah stuff. Let me find the chat again. Here's the chat. I'm going to send it here. And the Progen pipelines thing that I told you about, it's also an open source project with an opinionated solution. At the moment, we have a CDK application, which has an opinionated CI/CD pipeline. Feel free to also have a look on that project, and feel free to start, not Viktor you, but people listening to this, to start contributing to that project, because it's open source and we would love to get your perspective and your insights into that. Cool. Viktor, I'm kind of done with what I had in mind for covering with you today. Thank you so much for the time and the energy that you brought into this.
You're welcome.
What would be your final advice for listeners?
Start it from small piece. Don't rely that what you had or read something in the internet. Make some research. Read very carefully the article from Martin Fowler about continuous integration. It's amazing job. It's amazing article to cover most of these pieces what I today said. And continuous integration, it's not only your build server. Continuous integration, it's culture, how you integrate the results of a job between different teams.
Yep, I cannot agree more to that. So that's really what I think as well. You need to start somewhere. Don't wait for someone else to start your CI/CD journey, but start with something. And even if it's just taking your source code in an automated way to production, that's also already CI/CD, even if you don't have all of the fancy stuff that Viktor and I talked about today. Cool. Viktor, I'm looking forward to see you next week in Berlin, and it was great fun. Thank you so much for your insights and for your thoughts. And
You're welcome.
Where can people find more about you? Is it just LinkedIn, or are you still on X, or what's your preferred social these days?
LinkedIn.
Cool. So then I'm gonna link your profile. If people have questions, they will definitely reach out. And if you have questions and don't want to approach Viktor directly, feel free to put that in the show notes, and we're going to get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you. Bye bye.
Bye bye.